Advance warning, this episode mentions infant loss and miscarriage. If this is a sensitive topic for you right now, refer to the show notes for highlights of this episode instead. Welcome to Being in Motherhood. We're your hosts, Kendra Fitzgerald and Nicole Coons, sisters, moms, and the co-founders of Devoted Mamas.
This show is all about you and using your perfectly messy, absurd, and marvelous experiences in motherhood as opportunities to hone your greatest qualities.
Because your family deserves the best of you, not the most of you.
You'll gain the tools to be a bold advocate for yourself in pregnancy, claim your joy in birth, and find wholeness in postpartum.
Being in motherhood starts right here.
In today's episode, it's Kendra sitting down with Nicole for a chance to get to know a little bit about her and some of the powerful shifts she experienced as a mother that she now teaches to our students and clients. So, Nicole, you're a mom, obviously, right? Your kids are 13 and 10.
Yes. I have a girl, my oldest one, and my youngest is a boy. I got one of each, which is lovely.
And within our company, Devoted Mamas, you are a resident pregnancy and postpartum yoga expert and mindset ninja. You're also a trauma-informed yoga facilitator and birth and postpartum educator. It's a lot. But I really want to highlight this aspect of the trauma-informed work that you do. And we will get into this more in future episodes. But what your trauma-informed training and approach really brings is something really special to the pregnant and postpartum experience that mothers have. So before we get into that, I want to jump back to a little bit about yoga. So yoga has been in your life since what, like 1999? It's like when yoga was just starting to be cool, right? And now you're immersed in this world of pregnancy and postpartum yoga, corrective exercise, motherhood mindset mastery, and self-betterment. What were the pivotal moments that really brought you to this point?
Yes, there were several pivotal moments that have brought me to this point. And the first of which is my own experience with having two very different birth and postpartum experiences. My first one, I followed a lot of common approaches, read books, went to classes, bought all the bottles and the things that we buy for our babies. And my hospital birth was pretty typical. I had an epidural. And postpartum was pretty typical as well. I came home. It was my husband and I for a while. Then we had family coming in to help. And all of it was good on the surface. But underneath, on the inside, I did feel a little disappointed because I kind of, having been a yoga practitioner and kind of taken prenatal yoga and done a lot of the birthing classes, I thought, oh, I should be able to do this no problem without any medication. But I didn't have enough to really make that happen. And so I just felt this mild disappointment with myself that my birth, maybe with a little more support, a little more assistance, more information, more understanding within myself, I could have maybe had a different birth when it was unmedicated. And then postpartum, we had our first baby was very colicky and we had lots of sleepless nights. And I think we both got sick. I got bronchitis. It was really hard. And I remember there was a point in time, maybe just a few months in, when she would spend whole nights crying and we would just pass our baby back and forth between us to console her and try to get her back to sleep. And I remember one night after being with her all day long and then all night long as well, I remember one night when I turned to my husband and I said, I'll hold her, but you hold me. And it was that moment when I realized that I was not fully okay. I really needed more help. I needed more support. And so I had to sort of self-diagnose postpartum depression because I was feeling so overwhelmed and so helpless that I wasn't quite sure how I was going to make it through the next day. I was so exhausted. So in seeking out support and really reconciling all the journey I had traveled up to that point, at this point, it was 3 months in, everything that I had kind of traveled without really fully digesting it all, right? I had just sort of gone through the paces quickly, hurriedly, stressfully, anxiously. And then arriving at that place, it was like, oh my gosh, this is intense. And I felt there was a kind of trauma of sorts in the postpartum. So I really didn't even want to have another baby, at least not yet. Eventually, after a couple of years, we started to think, okay, it would be really nice for her to have a sibling. So we decided we would start trying for a second, and I got pregnant immediately. And there I was faced with having to deal with like, oh crap, here I am pregnant. It's going to happen again. I need to prepare differently. I want this to be different. And that was a really pivotal point, probably the combination of having that experience, disappointment and depression combined with wanting something different and then having a pregnancy right happening to help me move through that. So with my second, I prepared very differently, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and had a very different experience. My second birth was ecstatic, even orgasmic, a detail that I usually leave out. But I'm deciding to share about this because women need to know that it's possible to have a birth in a hospital setting that actually feels good and satisfying. And whatever that means for you. For me, that was having an ecstatic, even orgasmic experience. That's what I prepared for, and that's what I got. So, why this was pivotal was that one of the things I did when I was pregnant with my second, in order to prepare better, I dove into an advanced prenatal postpartum yoga teacher training. And it was pivotal. It was mind-blowing, mind-opening. It was amazing. I had some of the best teachers in the world, doulas and birth educators and yoga instructors who'd been doing this for decades already. And I received so much from this group of women that enabled me to feel knowledgeable and empowered to have the kind of birth I wanted to have. But it also at the same time stung that I had to have these credentials. I had to already be a yoga teacher. I had to already have experience teaching yoga as a teacher to get access to this level of insight and support and connection that I received. And so this training experience really solidified in me that what I had been learning as a professional was missing so much in the community of prenatal yoga and childbirth education, that there were a lot of disconnects that weren't happening. There were connections that were not being made out there. And it became instantly like my purpose, my mission, my dharma here became so clear that it's my job is to really equip mothers with the wisdom that exists, and they just need to be shown how to use it. And, this knowledge is not a secret, but we're led to believe that it is because it's just not talked about, or we believe it's not within the purview of whatever childbirth education. Why wouldn't we be talking about breathing and positions and hormones and different things that come into play in your visualization, things that we talk about in yoga that are being left out in childbirth education, and things from childbirth education that are being left out of yoga. So it's really not enough to blindly go along with our bodies knowing what to do. Like, if there was like 11 light equivalent, like 11 light bypassing equivalent in the childbirth preparation, it would be like, I trust my body. Of course, we trust our body, but in today's world, in this reality where highly medicalized, insurance model governed, if we're leveraging or using that system to birth our babies, we have to be prepared at another level. And in order to really give birth with autonomy and as an active participant in our labor and delivery, given that environment, and to be partners with our medical providers and to show up as who we are, the birthing mother, and also leverage the skill and the expertise and all of that goodness that the medical community provides us to have both, we have to prepare differently. And so that's what this really came out for me. This is a huge pivotal moment for me, and that we need to take a conscious approach to birthing. And yoga provides so many ways to practice conscious birthing and really to use yoga as a way to consciously prepare for birth and even to prepare for motherhood.
I love how our paths are so similar. We both had one experience with our first child, which then led us to do research and read and, trainings and everything to learn more and have a different experience with the second. And now we're taking all of that and teaching it to other mothers so they don't have to go through that experience. But I just love yours is on the yoga mental mindset framework, and mine's more on like the physical aspect, but I just love how they're so similar.
Yeah.
Well, I know over the years you've had some clients and students who are really pivotal in your journey as an educator too. Tell us more about that.
Yes. So For sure, one client in particular, one student of mine back in 2017 definitely was a pivotal moment for me. She was a woman who had been a prenatal student in an earlier pregnancy, and she was coming back for her second pregnancy. After class, she walked up to me and said, "You know how I kind of disappeared at 20 something weeks? Well, I actually lost my baby at 25 weeks." And when she shared that news with me, I was floored because even though I was aware of that happening, it had never been in my immediate circle, and certainly not in the small community where I live that I was witness to that happening. And so instantly, my mind went to her, my heart went to her, and really began this whole realm of contemplation around the impact of trauma, the impact of loss, and even extending further to the situations that we face in the medicalized environment of birth, when childbirth itself is a very organic and sort of vulnerable process, and yet we do it in an environment that is anything but. And layering in the reality of C-section rates, at least here in the state of New Jersey where we live, 1 in 3 mothers will end up with a C-section, whether planned or emergency. So this really opened my eyes to the realities of trauma in childbirth, whether they be loss or birth trauma of other kinds, medical trauma, obstetric trauma, or other. And feeling so grateful that I was steeped in the practice of yoga, because I knew that yoga has built in it inherently the ability to heal. And of course, these days we have lots of, quote, trauma informed trainings, many of which I have participated in and received a great deal of value from. Yoga does have the tools to resolve trauma in the body.
Right. When we started doing our postpartum repair and restore workshops around that same time, we also noticed when you start awakening the pelvic floor and the energetic body after having a baby, we had a lot of moms come forward with stories of trauma, either birth trauma, postpartum trauma, or prior trauma that was reawakened through childbirth and this pelvic floor connection. Also, I remember that stirring that in you of like, this is something that we really need to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, even now, we've taken our work further. We have a trauma-informed postpartum repair and restore process, right? A program. So we recognize the importance of that. We're going to go deeper in another episode later about what is trauma-informed and all that, because that's a huge, fascinating area that we want to spend more time on. But for now, suffice it to say that this one person really was a pivotal point for me, and not only opened me to the necessity of being trauma sensitive and bringing that as a lens that we use to filter our work through, but also returning to the source of yoga, like the original science and its healing modalities, the healing truth of yoga at its origin. And even now, when we start with a new client, we spend a good amount of time interviewing them about their story. Different people bring forward different things. And it's that interview that gives us the insight into what's at play in terms of restoring your muscles and your body, because it's not just the muscles that we're healing. So this work, even though it seems tangential to postpartum, I think everyone who works with us benefits from this insight.
So, Nicole, one of the things that I love about you is that you have a very different philosophy for birth preparation, and it's one that I definitely benefited from as well. What is your philosophy on birth prep?
Yeah, I think it's different. It's different than what I see a lot of people doing out there. My philosophy is that you need to practice for birth, not study. Right? Birth happens from the neck down. Yeah. And you actually want to practice in your body, in your mind, your mindset, where you're focusing, managing your emotions. And the reality of what you're practicing for is you're practicing for everything to be unpredictable and full of interruptions and unexpected turns. I can recall in my second birth, the one where I had, an ecstatic experience, the nurses came in, they were talking about the soccer game that they all went to last weekend while I was in labor. And I was like, quote, in my zone, I actually didn't need them to be on the same page as me. It was, a little bit distracting, I suppose, but I didn't let it deter me or take me off course. And there will be a lot of unpredictable things happening in our labor and our delivery experience. What we find is that the more you practice, the more you get to practice having wrenches thrown into the wheel, right? For me, I do my yoga practice at home, which is a great environment to really experiment with that reality of practicing even though kind of thing. I like to think of the ski jumper as an analogy. So the Olympian ski jumper isn't necessarily perfecting his technique to jump when the conditions are perfect, when the weather is still, there's no clouds, the sun is out, there's no rain, everything. He's actually training for all the conditions, for the wind going this way, the ice doing this, the helmet not functioning correctly, the ski falling off. Like, right? They're actually,
Right.
it's the outliers. Now, are we actually practicing for all of the eventual things? Not exactly. But what we are practicing specifically is how we show up. And that is the reality of what we're practicing. We're getting into the feeling of our own strength, the feeling of our own vulnerability. I like to think of like a rose, right? A rose is very beautiful and strong in its opening, but also very vulnerable. That opening is large. And practicing feeling the reality of your own feminine power. The strength is in being conscious enough to choose how we show up, that we realize what we bring to the table or the bed or, our birth, as the case may be, what we bring to the table is what we're cultivating. So this is how we practice for birth. And there's a lot more that goes into it, but the difference is that we're not just reading books and taking classes and filling our heads with information, taking notes. We're actually moving into a body, a sensory experience, a somatic experience of trusting your body because you know it and because you have connected with it.
Yeah, I like to use the analogy of being a theater person. This is something we talk about a lot with our pregnant clients. When you think about a star of a musical, they are prepping for months, if not years, for this role. And they're not just reading books about it. They're not just reading the script. They're actually putting themselves physically in that environment. They're physically prepping, doing the physical prep and the mental prep in order to be as fully present as possible. And I think birth is the same.
Totally.
Are you tired of being told that your pregnancy or postpartum aches and pains are normal and should just go away on their own? That your concerns about birth are normal and not to worry? Like you're supposed to wait, take it easy, and do the whole trust your body thing. Yes, our bodies are amazing, but waiting and trusting without any action only makes imbalances, weakness, and insecurities worse. We work privately with moms who want to take an active role in creating strength, healing, confidence, and independence, whether that's in your fitness, in your birth, or in your active life as a mother. Moms who work with us value having a simplified path to follow that's personalized to their needs and gets them to their mind, body, and fitness goals faster. If you need more help feeling your best in pregnancy, birth, or postpartum, reach out. See if we're fit to work together. Contact us at devotedmamas.com/private coaching. You can be strong and confident for the next adventure ahead of you. See if working with us can help. Go to devotedmamas.com/private coaching, all one word. That's devotedmamas.com/private coaching. Now back to the show.
And one of the main ways that we help mothers connect with that practice is through yoga. And I know you're a huge proponent of yoga for all mothers. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, easy. Every mother should give yoga a chance. Every mother, whether you're pregnant, postpartum, we just need the nervous system regulation and the healing that yoga provides. Let's not forget that at its root, yoga is a healing modality. It's not just a form of exercise and contortions. And yoga is essential, I think, for birth preparation, because not only are you keeping your body strong and supple, we talk about things, we practice things, breathing, body connection, intuition, developing that somatic, more fine-tuned connection to your body and kind of cause and effect relationship. So birth and motherhood are all of these things: physical, mental, emotional, right? Birth is very emotional. Energetic, birth and motherhood are both very energetic things, like not just like high energy, but like they demand a lot of energy. And birth and motherhood are also very spiritual if we are open to that. And yoga is all of these things too. Yoga is physical, mental, emotional, energetic, and even spiritual. And so this is why I think it makes such a perfect place. It is something you can do from the very beginning of your pregnancy to the very end. It's one of the things you can do right from the beginning in the right way, right after giving birth. So yoga is, in my opinion, the most important practice that someone can embrace as a part of their motherhood journey.
What about the people who don't do yoga? Yeah, I know a lot of moms get pregnant and then they're told by their doctors or their OBs or midwives that they should do prenatal yoga. And then they're like, I've never done it before, or I hate it, or I'm not flexible. What would you say to those moms?
For those people, maybe some science will help. So yoga in pregnancy can make the difference in how your labor goes, i.e. shorter, and how you heal in postpartum, i.e. faster. So yeah, there are actual studies that have been done that prove that yoga does make labor shorter, more efficient, meaning the body does what it needs to do more efficiently, and mothers experience greater satisfaction with their birth, both during and after. In addition to that, yoga affects changes in your hormones in positive ways, increasing levels of oxytocin, reducing the stress hormones, cortisol, and so forth in your body, and helping your body use those hormones for your baby's growth, for your own well-being, and really just creating an environment that helps your baby grow fully, healthfully, and lowering stress in your own body, which of course benefits both you and your baby. And finally, we know that deep breathing and being calm is very beneficial, and you need to rest quite a bit, in pregnancy. Sometimes that's really hard. And yoga, because we really start with the physical body in the yoga practice, the asana postures are a way into breathing deeper. So while you can sit and breathe, sometimes that's hard to do. So yoga gets you breathing deeply and more efficiently while also stretching your body, and it feels really good.
That's what I was about to add. It feels really good when you're pregnant.
Yes, it feels so good.
As your sister, what I'd really love for people to know about you is that with your insight and support, I was able to have 2 unmedicated births, and my experiences of birthing were very positive. And what I'd love for people to know about you is that you are unwavering, and you've always been this way. Very little tips your boat. You have so much patience, and you have this incredible ability to be witness to other people's stories and hold space for people that's open and non-judgmental. And I think that is such an important characteristic of what you bring to your work, because as mothers, we have very little opportunity to actually be heard. And I think that is one of your greatest strengths, is your ability to actually hear people and to let people express themselves without worrying that they're going to, upset you or be afraid to tell the truth or the whole story. Because, sometimes when we're telling our friends different stories, we might edit things out because we're like, oh, I don't want them to carry this burden, or, that kind of thing. And I just think that working with you and having you as a sounding board and personal experience here as well, there is just so much space that you hold. And I've learned so much from you as my big sister. And I wish you guys could see me now because I'm about to cry. But I've learned so much from you as my big sister, and I'd love to know the lessons you've learned for yourself.
Yes. Well, thank you for those kind words. And the lessons that I have learned that I would like to share with others is, number one, expect motherhood to be a journey of personal growth. And it starts in pregnancy. I think a lot of the trauma and just emotional turmoil we get ourselves in is that we don't expect it to be as much of a journey and as much of a growing opportunity as it really is. So how we do that is we start by telling the stories. Be forthcoming with the stories, telling the stories, and then reflect on the stories that you're telling and asking, what can I learn from this story? So we're using the stories and the challenges, and especially the way we are seeing them, as springboards for our next step. And again, embracing this theme of I'm going to grow and change a lot. And the more we expect that, the more we can prepare for that, and the less it keeps us on edge. We're more prepared and
100%.
ready to just tackle it. I think the second lesson is go for the best birth. Aim for it. Go for the best birth and postpartum experience you can imagine. Be bold. Get help from people like myself and others of our generation that are seeing other possibilities. In some cases, it might mean you have to be willing to go first. You have to be that pioneer, the creative, the maverick, those archetypes right there. I'm remembering one mom that I worked with in our Empowered Pregnancy Immersion, and she came from generations of mothers that had elected C-sections, not because they needed them, but just because that's what they did. And she had a completely natural, unmedicated birth in a hospital and was ecstatic, was so proud that she had asked for and received what it is she wanted. So, the lesson is just speak up, take a stand for yourself. And in doing so, you give other mothers the evidence they need to do the same. And this is really what I've been practicing over the last, since 2008, really just practicing this myself and sharing what is it that I learned and that now you can learn and apply for yourself. And finally, keep your body in motion. Move. That's the thing. There's a quote that Pattabhi Jois, yoga guru, says. He says, do your practice and all is coming. That's it. Keep your body in motion. And in healing your body, you're also building the strength of your heart and your spirit. That's the resilience that we need in motherhood. That's back to number one lesson, right? Maybe these are one and the same. That expecting motherhood to be a journey of personal growth is about moving our body so that we can be resilient for all that life brings our way. It's like instead of wishing for things to be easier, we want to make ourselves stronger. And I'm not talking about like stronger in muscles. I mean, that's good and really important and awesome, feels really good. But being stronger from within, like a torch flame that burns endlessly and glows even brighter when it's subjected to strong winds. And it's this kind of strength that comes from within. For me, my experience, what I've learned is that keeping your body in motion and what that looks like can evolve and often does evolve. And it will continue to evolve through different phases of motherhood. So be open and follow your heart and keep moving. That's it.
And you've always been a mover and a shaker.
Mm-hmm.
When we were kids, you were always dancing. We were both always dancing. We danced to Footloose on the bed. Yep. And it was so great. And you still love it to this day.
Yeah. I grew up dancing, ballet, modern, all the things. And I come back to that source of rhythm and flow to keep my spirit alive. I find it in my yoga practice now. I find it throughout my day. And I find it, of course, in dancing, even as an adult.
We often talk about that your family needs the best of you, not the most of you. What does that mean to you?
Oh, well, we get inundated without even realizing it with the baby bottles, the dirty dishes, the minutes feeding, minutes sleeping, and so on. We get so obsessed with details of everyday life and our babies that we get sucked in. And we very easily fall into doing it all. What happens when we walk down that path of doing everything for too long, we get depleted. So what happens when we're depleted, we're spending all of our time with our babies, we're getting oxytocin highs. Like oxytocin is that hormone that we need, that happy, that laughter, right? That gives us oxytocin. But we're not getting oxytocin from other aspects of our life, real life, that feed us. We're only getting oxytocin highs from our baby. But here's the thing, our baby is also feeding off of us. They're getting their oxytocin, that human connection, oxytocin high off of us. So if we're getting it from them, they're getting it from us. We need to think too about how we are replenishing. So we have it backwards if we're only putting all of our energy into our babies and not putting energy into ourselves. So in order for baby to get the most from you, you need to be filled up with reserves of your own. So that way we get our own oxytocin highs from things that are most replenishing to us. How? By doing things we love. So we need things that feel cathartic, that feel peaceful, that feel joyful to us, separate from time with our baby. So we need breaks, right? When we do that, when we get breaks from our babies and from our roles and responsibilities, we end up bringing our best, not just the most. And yeah, exactly. Like what is joyful for one person can be torture for another, right? Like cleaning for me, like my housekeeper loves cleaning. Great. She can do that. I love cooking. So I do that, right? And, everybody will find their thing. But this takes time to figure out. Give yourself time to come into that, but know that it begins by just becoming aware of where you're falling into the habit of just giving. And give yourself, working with the people in your immediate circle, to find space, to carve space out for yourself to be alone. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that we're available 24/7 for our kids. What matters when it comes to this idea of the best of you, not the most of you, it means that quality of the time matters more than the quantity. Because if we're showing up feeling calm, collected, attentive with our children, that hour spent is going to be way more impactful and meaningful to them than 6 hours where we're spent frantic, exhausted, and angry. Then we simply have to ask ourselves, how do we show up as the kind of person we want to be? Who is the person I want to be? What are the qualities I wish to cultivate? And sometimes we need space for that, and that's good.
All right, awesome. Now, at the end of every episode, we have what we call the Would You Rather round. It's a quick fire round of would you rather questions. So your turn. Number 1 for you. Would you rather be able to stop time or go back in time?
Stop time.
Okay. Very succinct.
Because if I went back in time, I would do everything the same way. I've learned so much. I'm exactly where I am today because of where I've been. And I love that. Mm-hmm. So I would just like to stop time. Then I could keep my kids at this awesome age that they're at right now.
That's right. Amazing. Would you rather do all the housework forever or have your partner do it all, but not the way you want it done?
Number 2, option 2. Have it done, even if it's done incorrectly.
Have your partner do it all.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is totally where we differ. Yes. I want to do all the housework. If it's not done right, no way. That's awesome. All right. Question number 3. Would you rather go into the past and meet your ancestors or go into the future and meet your great-great-grandchildren? A lot of time travel here.
I guess I would go forward. I guess I feel like the ancestors are already within me. That's like built into me already. And so that sense of other piece that I don't know yet, not that I know, everything about my ancestors, but I feel like there's so much of it that is coming through me now that future piece would be so fascinating to see.
Cool. I love it. Well, thanks, Nicole, for sharing your story with us today. As your little sister, I am so thrilled to let other mothers get a peek into your thoughtful guidance that I've had years, actually many decades, to be a recipient of. And it is truly a pleasure to work alongside you.
Oh, thanks, sis.
To our listeners, if you have a specific question or comment for Nicole, we have a cool way for you to leave a voice note for us by visiting devotedmamas.com/podcast question.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the Being in Motherhood podcast by Devoted Mamas, please share it with other mothers and leave a review.
As always, you can find us on Instagram at Devoted Mamas and check out all links and resources in the show notes. Be courageous and stay devoted to growing into your best self as a mom.